Okay, welcome everybody to our first live webinar of the EDX course, Sustainable Housing Design. Today, your teachers, who you may recognize from the videos at the MOOC, will be here to answer your questions and to dive deep into the case studies and post questions from the online MOOC. My name is Madelief. I am the course moderator, and maybe you've seen me online answering to your questions, etc. And today I'm here with Nelson, Frederic, Rowan, and Penina. So yeah, maybe the other professors can introduce themselves. Nelson?
Hello, thank you, Madelief. Indeed, my name is Nelson Mota. I am associate professor at the Department of Architecture of the Faculty of Architecture at the TU Delft. And I've been coordinating and teaching a group called Global Housing, where we focus on issues concerning the design of affordable housing in the context of rapid urbanization. So yeah, very happy to be here, and thank you.
Yeah, I could go next. I'm Rohan Varma. I'm also a colleague of Nelson's. We've been collaborating on many different design studios, exchange programs, workshops over the past few years. I was also on the team of the previous MOOC that we put together, the Global Housing Design MOOC, from a few years ago. I'm originally from India. I'm from Mumbai, but I did my master's at TU Delft and recently also defended my PhD. And very happy to be here today.
And maybe Penina, you can also say a word about who you are.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Penina Motonga. I'm a PhD here at TU Delft University, working with Nelson Mota as well as Professor Dick Van Hammeren, and also in the Global Housing Research Studio. So I'm excited to be here. Originally, I'm from Kenya. Did my bachelor's in the University of Nairobi, did my master's in the University of Cambridge. And so this is a good course to undertake.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Frederic van Andel. I'm a researcher at TU Delft, the Faculty of Architecture, and also for a long time a colleague of Nelson and Rohan. And also worked together with them on our previous MOOC on global housing design. Well, today we will elaborate a bit on your work so far. First, I will discuss a bit the outcome of the Sustainable Housing Design word cloud that we asked you to generate after watching the very first lecture in week 1 of this MOOC. And then Rowan will elaborate on the news articles that learners have uploaded, and Nelson will discuss a few of the case studies that were uploaded on the Sketch Drive. Okay, let me share the screen to show you the word cloud. I hope it's visible.
Yep.
Well, we asked you to enter 3 keywords that for you represent well, the primary aspect of sustainable housing design. And actually you were not allowed to use the words sustainability, housing and design because that's too obvious, but some of you did anyway. But well, no problem. Around 40 learners have submitted words, and I think we can see that 2 words stand out. Community and affordability, or affordable. And this is actually, well, not a bad outcome, I must say. It's difficult to come up with only 3 words to summarize your ideas of what sustainable housing design could entail. But many people entered this word community. And I think together with some single words that I see, like culture, memories, accessibility, appropriate, adaptation, and co-creation, I think we can conclude that all these words can be put under the umbrella of the theme of social cultural adequacy that we addressed in week 3 of the MOOC. Also, many learners entered the word affordability or affordable. And this is not such a surprise because it is indeed a very important component of sustainable housing design. And it's the second theme that we explained further in the MOOC last week. Then we see some smaller words like materiality, comfort, durable, environment, energy. And I think all these words relate to the last theme that we will address in this MOOC, which is materiality. So, well, it's nice to see that many of you already came up with aspects of sustainable housing design that indeed are all part of this integrated approach that we advocate here in this MOOC. So, yeah, thank you. That's it for me.
Yeah, perhaps maybe I could now just discuss a bit the discussion forum that we had going. And many of the learners have submitted news articles. And it's wonderful to go through it because actually it's an opportunity for us sitting in Delft to also learn from other contexts and to come across cases and issues that might have, fallen out of our radar. So it's really an opportunity for us also to learn. So thank you very much for submitting those. But it's also an opportunity for us to realize that there's a lot in common. There's a lot of commonality and the issues that we face, for example, where I'm from in India, also resonate with many other places around the world. So the housing crisis, what I realize is, of course, is that it's really, in a sense, a very global problem at the moment. And we're looking at numbers that are absolutely frightening. So 2/3 of all future urbanization is expected to be informal. That means we're going from a situation where, at the moment, 1 billion slum dwellers will balloon to something like 3 billion in just about 25, 30 years. So in this context, it becomes really, I think, important for us to reimagine what architecture and planning can do as a tool to deal with this kind of growth and this kind of very unequal growth that we all know will actually happen. And for us as architects and planners, I think it's an opportunity for us to also rethink and revise what our strategies and our standards should be when it comes to the building of affordable and sustainable housing. So I'm going to jump into a couple of articles that spoke to me. One of them is from Sarah. And she was writing from the context of Iran, where she speaks about the issue of sustainable architecture, or let's say architecture in general, and the production of housing in general, having moved away completely from what used to be sustainable architecture. The country has a very rich history of traditional vernacular architecture that seems to have been lost, and that's essentially what she's pointing towards. Maybe I can just try sharing my screen and bringing up her news article online. Just a second. I hope you all see this. Do you all? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
So it's an article that she shared where they're basically addressing the issue that modern construction systems seem to have completely forgotten all the wonderful lessons that once existed in vernacular architecture. If you look at any Iranian city, you would have found actually wonderful examples, and that seems to have been lost. And there needs to be a revision of those principles. And my only reaction to this is, of course, and I think this is an issue with a lot of places, not just Iran. But speaking of Iran, we've also been doing research on housing in Iran. In fact, a former colleague of us did a PhD looking at architecture and the problems of building mass housing in Iran. And this was also a case study. So Shushtar New Town, which is also on the screen right now, was a case study also in our previous MOOC. And you can find it online on our open journals that we have. But it was really an example of a project where an architect tried to rethink what the architecture of dwelling could be, learning from the vernacular, learning from how old towns and cities were formed and how dwelling types have evolved in traditional Iranian towns, and learning from all of that to sort of produce this very, I think, still very modern project, but now that's almost 50 years old. So I would encourage Sarah and many others to look at examples of housing like this. And the challenge indeed, and you're absolutely right, the challenge is how do you bring this back into today's discussion? And that's a hard ask, but it has to be done. And it's just projects like these are just a reminder that it was possible at one point. Kamran Diba was also reacting to the same issues 50 years ago. He was reacting to the sort of mechanization of housing, the mass production of housing, which focused only on efficiency and scale and forgot how actually people live in dwelling in housing projects. So this is, I think, for me, a wonderful case to look back to. The drawings and photographs can all be found in this open journal that we have online. But then moving away from Iran, there was another learner who spoke of a rather interesting scheme or a proposal that's, I think, now under construction in Rwanda, which is the Green City. And it's, to be honest, I didn't know about this project, but I was just going through material online and trying to find out some information about it. On the surface, it all looks very promising. It all looks very interesting. It's a new city, well, a large master plan that's being developed called Kigali. And if you read it, it all sounds really quite promising. The question that has been posed is, in the context of this project, can affordability actually be achieved if local materials are used and where cultural adequacy is an important factor? What would be the trade-offs and how can planners deal with trying to find the optimal balance between all these issues? And the answer, of course, is, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens with this project. What is important, of course, is to understand that whenever you look at a project like this, you need to ask who's building it, who's putting in the money, and then asking questions such as, who is this really aimed for? Is it really aimed at the lower income groups? And I perhaps have certain doubts about that. It's perhaps aimed at more the middle classes and the upper middle classes. So yes, it could be a viable project for certain income groups. Whether or not it addresses the housing issue at scale is something else. But it is an interesting case. And like I said, I didn't know of this till a couple of days ago, but it's been interesting to read a little bit about it. Another project that came in one of the news articles was from Nigeria, which, of course, when you look at images like this, it's something that I can also completely, let's say, relate to. And the article that was shared is this article on The Guardian, but it's really talking about the challenges of building affordable housing in a country that faces a deficit of somewhere in the region of 17 to 28 million units. And that's a huge number. And it's not an easy sort of challenge to address, but it is a challenge that, let's say, in India we've been dealing with. And the only answer that I have, let's say, coming out of that is that we absolutely need to involve the people in the production of housing. And we need to find ways in which we can marry top-down and bottom-up planning. If we go with this idea that the government can build it all, I think that will simply not be possible. It's only been possible in history in certain city-states like Singapore. But for most countries on the planet, that would be a very difficult ask. So I have a lot of reservations whether the government could single-handedly produce these numbers. I think the demand is just too big and supply simply will not be able to keep up. But also, if they were to build that kind of housing, I think there would be serious concerns and questions regarding the sustainability of those projects, whether they really relate to how people live, whether they really relate to how much people earn. The other, let's say, camp in housing policy discourse is the role of the private sector, the role of public-private partnerships. There again, I have a lot of reservations. I think the private sector has to be one of the players involved, but it cannot be given a total free hand. And India, again, is an example where the government has given the private sector a total free hand, and we see absolutely disastrous projects coming out of that, out of India. So, I mean, I could go on and on about also India as a case. Maybe if the discussion allows later, I could show some slides about what's happening in India. But it was interesting to just review some of these articles that came in to again understand the issue is really a really sort of global issue, but it's also an issue that a lot of countries are dealing and grappling with. But maybe, yes, perhaps later in the discussion, I can bring up some slides from India to sort of show you what's been happening and suggest a possible way forward. But yeah, for now, I think that's it from the news article room, and then we could perhaps go to Nelson if he's ready.
Sure, Rowan, thank you so much. By the way, Penina, as our guest in this webinar today, feel free if there is any question that arises from this discussion. We are more than happy to engage with you in the conversation. This is indeed meant to be an informal exchange triggered by the inputs that we received so far from the community of learners of this MOOC. So, but indeed, we can also at the end come together again for a small discussion.
Yes, indeed. Maybe I could just comment on the conversations. Sure. I think it's interesting to see the wide array of contribution we're seeing from different parts of the globe, which I think enriches the conversation because, of course, the course does provide several case studies. And so it's interesting to see how different participants are adapting this knowledge and seeing how it intersects with their context. So when I look at, for example, what has been shared, a focus on materiality, for example, in Iran and also Rwanda, and looking at maybe how does cost, which I think is what the main focus of the course was, to see how the three aspects of sustainable housing actually intersect. So it would be interesting to see how each of these case studies is analyzed to bring about the three elements. So I can resonate with what is being shared in Nigeria, for example, governments targeting very ambitious delivery of projects. So we also see that in Kenya happening, and also seeing the aftermath of that target being implemented and not being achieved. So it would be interesting to see how the different case studies evolve throughout the course. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Penina. And actually, that's the perfect segue for what I'm about to share. So when we designed this MOOC, so one of the things that we have also learned with the previous MOOC, we developed the Global Housing Design MOOC, is that this is also a great opportunity for us to learn from the diversity of participants and learners coming from more than 160 countries around the world in the previous MOOC. So in this one, it's still growing in the community. And for us, it's also a revelation to get confronted with, let's say, different processes of development of adequate housing in such distinct geopolitical contexts, let's say, as those that Rowan already mentioned here today. But this is even going to increase, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. And just to give also a little glimpse of what we have received in terms of the case studies, I'm just going to share with you some of the submissions to the Sketch Drive on the assignment 2, 3, and 4, mostly on the assignment 2, which is the one where the participants should just produce 3 pages identifying the case study that they have chosen. And this is quite interesting. I mean, as I said, we don't have yet a lot of cases, but even those that we have so far already show the potential of addressing the diversity of the production of affordable housing to try to resonate with the challenges in different parts of the globe. For example, in this case, this is indeed the case in Nigeria, which was uploaded by Karim. And we see here a housing estate built quite recently. So it was developed between 2020 and 2022. And this is indeed addressing low-income earners who are, somehow would be then able to have an easier commute to Abuja. And this case, we will see, let's say, in the characteristics of the case, that they have a particular aspect that resonates very much with some of the aspects that we address in this MOOC. Now, just to also emphasize that this case has been a partnership between the Miller Fuller Foundation, which is led by architect Samuel and Olufunmilayo Odia, but also partnering with Real UK, the Fuller Center of Housing, and Selavip International. So this is a partnership between different organizations, different stakeholders, and also integrated in a federal government initiative. So this also gives us a little sense that, you know, housing usually it's not really something that is developed single-handedly. You know, this always entails very many different stakeholders, and even negotiating the interests of the different stakeholders. It's not an easy thing. So the case uploaded by Karim is quite useful also to address that. And what Karim also shows with this picture illustrates how there is we can recognize slightly different variations to the type. So when you look carefully, this type here is different from that type over there, and then also different from that type over there. So this also shows how the even in affordable housing developments, you can still have variations of types and trying to accommodate different ways of living, different patterns of everyday life. But then when we move to a completely different context, in this case, the Netherlands, where we are, joining you, from where we are joining you, we see now another kind of sustainable housing that is very much in need in this part of the world, which is student housing. So there's a great shortage of student housing in the Netherlands. And many organizations are trying to focus on the development of affordable and adequate student housing, especially in the cities where the population of students is prominent. And this is a case in The Hague, which is a city close to Delft. And you see in this project, which is also a contemporary project, so developed just a few years ago. And this is also part of an area of The Hague, which used to be an industrial zone, or an industrial area. So in this case, we see this is a picture of how it looks like now. So it has been recently built. And again, we have also different stakeholders involved, different protagonists of the projects, including, I believe, the major developer of student housing in the Netherlands, Duvel, is how it's called. And the whole complex will accommodate 197 student apartments, which are then rented to students and offering them affordable housing. And you see, I like very much what Lian uploaded in this diagram. That is which is in the page dedicated to the main design features. Because with this diagram, we can also unpack or decode the qualities of that project. So as all of you know, the name of this MOOC is Sustainable Housing Design. So the design component is very important for us because as we teach design and housing design in particular, so it's also interesting to see which are the design aspects that make this project potentially an illustration of a sustainable approach. So here, Lian emphasizes the different ways in which the materials were used, emphasizing more dark materials in the contact with the ground and lighter materials above the ground, but also a mix of different masonry and concrete and metal assets in the characterization of the building. So quite interesting. And then we go to, still in Africa, but in Northern Africa, in Morocco. I should maybe start with the first slide. In this case, the historical background of this case, which is Darlaman. By the way, also a case that we have analyzed in some detail in our previous MOOC, very much as Shustar that Rowan described a few minutes ago. And this case is indeed very interesting, started in the 1970s and was completed in the 1980s. and also represents a way that the Moroccan government, which became independent, it used to be a protectorate of France until the 1950s, and then after independence, they developed their own ideas for the development of adequate and affordable housing in Morocco. And this case is quite, an important reference in that process. You can see here a model that explains a little bit how the project looks like. And then again, the main protagonists, as I mentioned before, this is not only a governmental endeavor, so this also has other protagonists, the architects, but of course also a particular developer, which is the Compagnie Générale Immobilière, and then technical support, and we see how the funding comes from public sources, and then how the project was possible because they built on reclaimed land from a quarry, which is always an important aspect. So it's interesting that Rida mentioned this, because usually land ownership is very important for the development of affordable housing, because usually land corresponds to a very significant part of the cost of housing. And then Rida also emphasizes some of the main design features of the scheme, as opposed to the case in Nigeria, which were all, say, detached or semi-detached houses, meaning everyone has access through the street directly to their home. In this project, we are looking at a project with multi-story apartments, a multi-story apartment block, which means that some people who were used to live close to the ground were now living maybe in the first, second, or third floor, which always challenges a little bit, the typical patterns of everyday life, especially for those who migrate from the rural countryside. But this project advances some interesting ways of trying to mitigate the consequences of that change, which in some cases could be disruptive. So very interesting that Rita also emphasizes this. And then if we go to the assignment 3, which was the assignment where we were asking you to bring forth aspects, or the 3 aspects that we discuss under the theme of social cultural adequacy. Again, Liane talks about the social under the social inclusion, talks about the importance of having communal areas like the rooftop in the student housing in The Hague. And I believe that this is really an interesting way of understanding how specific design decisions can promote or actually hinder the inclusion of a community, in this case, a community of students that probably have never met each other before. And spaces like this, in the context of a city like The Hague, may be the special places that people can also call home, and consider the place where they can come together and enjoy some social exchange. And then indeed, Liane also addresses the issue of community engagement and emphasizing even this particular space, which is where you have all the mailboxes and the laundry rooms that encourage everyday interaction. So here, in fact, the image doesn't show anyone opening their mailboxes, but I can probably speculate there's going to be moments where people just meet there while they collect their house bills or something else. But also the aspect of cultural sensitivity. Of course, probably many of you know that in the Netherlands, many people commute by bicycle. And so the project also addresses that, and creating facilities to store bicycles and reflect these common living patterns in the Netherlands. If we go again to the case that was uploaded by Rida, let me maybe start with the social inclusion. Also very interesting to see how Rida emphasizes another feature of the design of this project, which are the shared courtyards and the pedestrian streets and the arcades and the shaded plazas. So all of these aspects, we have to see those as not something that are defined by a policy, but really something that the architects, the names of which you can see on the screen, Sharai Abderrahim and Lasrak Abdelaziz, included in the project. So all these aspects or these elements indeed promote this social inclusion and resonate with ways that people recognize as important to stimulate their social interaction, and then again also to promote community engagement, introducing aspects of, for example, the ceramics that you see in this detail, the picture in this detail, in the public spaces, the daily routines of the residents, which some of them used to be nomadic migrants. So these aspects are quite essential to promote also or to address the cultural sensitivity that we need to take into account in housing design and to make it more sustainable from a social cultural perspective. So Rida emphasizes how this project addresses these Moroccan traditions, especially emphasizing the importance of courtyard layouts, interconnected streets, arcades, and communal plazas. I can also share with you the one submission that was also by Liane, who deserves the award for the most active learner in the MOOC. So we hope that Liane will watch this record. So very well done, Liane. Thank you so much for your active and presence in contributing for the discussion and submitting your material. And if we go again to the case that Liane has been analyzing, so the student housing in The Hague, we see some of the issues concerning affordability, the second theme that we discuss in the MOOC, and in particular, in this case, density. And you can see how, as opposed to the case in Nigeria here, land is so expensive that density is really a crucial aspect to make it affordable. And the way that architects bring together all the different components of the project, but also breaking it in smaller pieces, using that kind of playful combination of materials, performs an important role in addressing the need for high density on the one hand, but also keeping it livable. And then if we move forward to even a particular issue of seriality, it's very important that for sustainable housing that each block is not different from the next one, because that means that we cannot have the economy of scale. So there's in housing, there's always this kind of repetition or a way of dealing with repetition. In the case of student housing, the basic unit is indeed the room. So I think it's very interesting that Liane just shows here the typical floor plan of a studio. So the basic unit of this housing, and basically this is the DNA of the project. It's from here that everything else stems from. And this also suggests that every single centimeter counts. So a small difference in the size of the toilet or in the kitchen or in the width or length of this unit would affect the whole project and potentially affect also its performance in terms of affordability. So very well done, Liane. And finally, Liane already uploaded also this page dedicated to connectivity, and then again emphasizing how in the middle of these density, students also have the opportunity of being very much connected with the heart of the city, but also to try to find their own places where they can come together as a community, which we already talked about in the social cultural adequacy. So here it's a little bit an interesting way that the project performs, both creating spaces to connect all the different residents in the complex, but also how the building connects with the city and with the extended urban area around it. So the fact that it's not like a kind of an urban island, it's to a certain extent also that, because you feel protected, but also an entity that is fully embedded in the city life. So I think that these cases, and I will stop sharing now, I think the cases that we have seen so far uploaded by the learners are very rich, and even this discussion that I just, or at least this description that I've now shared with you highlights some of the key aspects that we are really very keen in discussing with you. So we very much look forward to receive more of these, because so far the cases are really very exciting to discuss, and for us in many cases also a revelation of some of the key aspects of sustainable housing design. So thank you very much for those who have uploaded already, and looking forward for the other learners to also submit their material.
I think now, since all the professors gave all the presentations, I think we can wrap up. If there are any questions, maybe Penina or someone else have a question they want to pose to the professors. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap up this first live webinar. I don't know if Penina has a question, or that we wrap up.
Well, I think for me, I like to see, I think the emphasis that Nelson has made on focusing on the design, because that's really the area where we can impact sustainable housing design. It's also interesting maybe to, as we see the case studies, to hear your thoughts on how you see protagonists being able to impact design decisions. So for example, depending on different contexts, for example, where I come from in Kenya, you'll see indeed protagonists have different interests, but one of the issues that probably affect things to do with affordability and also design at the same time is land issues. So what comment would you give in terms of maybe for those who are yet to select their case studies, or those who are analyzing their case studies at that stage? How would you comment about the impact that protagonists have on design decisions? And yeah, thank you.
I think I can react immediately to that question. Thank you very much, Penina. I think that's a crucial issue, and we have indeed only dedicated one of the pages of this say booklet that we are building incrementally. It's the 0.2 dedicated to the project protagonists, and in that and that is indeed acknowledging that this is not just something that the architect or whoever did the design is someone illuminated by gods to produce a beautiful design. No, I mean, housing really depends on the interaction between different stakeholders, different protagonists indeed. And many of them are indeed those that facilitate the access to land and making it more or less affordable. And but also those that are developing it may or may not have an interest in generating profit or just some sort of cost recovery, which may also influence the adequacy and the affordability of the scheme. But also, in some cases, we know that communities were involved in the design decision-making. In other cases, not. So there are cases which are, as we would call it, top-down, and other cases which are bottom-up. And then the designer somewhere, plays somewhere in the middle. So we also see that one of the key roles of designers, architects, urban designers, but in this case, we are focusing on the architectural design perspective. We tend to operate as mediators in the process, and of course, contributing with specific expertise in design. In that respect, it's very important indeed to highlight how the different protagonists contribute to that design, and not thinking that design is only a matter that is in the hands of architects. It is indeed the result of interactions between different stakeholders. I don't know if Frederick and Rowan want to add something about that.
Well, no, I completely agree, but I think maybe the question could be disaggregated or further explored in the sense of who are we really talking about when we speak about protagonists or users? Who are the real targeted demographics? Are we talking about slum dwellers who now need a roof over their heads, or are we talking about middle class communities or higher income groups? Each of these different income groups will trigger different responses, and our responses have to be different for these varied income groups that we have to deal with. So for example, with the higher income groups, maybe the question of participation is a very different one, where it's more about choice and the flexibility of what you want because you can afford it. Whereas the question of participation for a slum dweller who's just looking for a place of shelter, that question is entirely different. And the design response is a very different response. And the role of the architect, of course, is a mediator in this whole process. So yeah, it's a heavy topic, but we need to therefore maybe be more specific. When we talk about slum dwellers, what is the role of the users? And when we talk about middle income communities, what is the role of the user and what is the role of the architect? It makes enormous differences in terms of the densities that we're talking about and the nature of affordability that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you all. This was the first live webinar we have. And next week we have another one. And I really encourage you all to come, since we have some guest lecturers who are going to participate in the webinar. Maybe, Frederik, you can introduce them a bit.
Yes,
So
you can.
the learners know who they can expect.
Yes, well, in this MOOC, we closely collaborated with the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, and one of their things they do is they every 2 years they have an Aga Khan Award for Architecture. And actually in this MOOC, we used projects that were nominated for this award. And in our previous MOOC, we used projects that won the award. But we have this long-term collaboration with them. So therefore, we invited Farouk Derekshani, the director of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, but also Raj Isar, the education director of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. He worked with UNESCO for 30 years on exchange on culture. We also invited Sami Padora, who's an architect, but since 2023, also the Dean of SEPT University, the Faculty of Architecture in India. He wrote a book. I think it has 2 titles, In the Name of Housing, and I think it's also published under like How to Build an Indian House. But it's a very interesting book where he analyzes 11 housing projects from India. Well, that's very interesting. Then we have Dick van Gameren, that's the Dean of our Faculty of Architecture in Delft. He's also an architect at Meccano and, well, a specialist in housing design. And of course, we will be there, the full MOOC team. So we hope to see you. It's on Thursday, the 27th of November in the morning at 10 o'clock. So hope to see you.
In the morning in Central Europe, of course. In other parts of the world, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. For me, it's the morning. For us.
Okay, thanks again to the course team today, and also to you as learners for participating in our MOOC, for posing the questions, for handing in all the case studies, because we also learn from this, but also the other learners on the platform also learn from your case studies. So thanks again to us as the course team and you as learner, and we hope to see you to our next webinar with all the guest learners. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.